Welcome, everyone, to Seeds of Liberty podcast, episode 30. We're going to go with Jeremy for the Bibcat No Gov license.
Oh, the string is broken. Yes, the Seeds of Liberty podcast is covered by the BIPCOT No Gov license. This allows for reuse by anyone except for governments and the agents thereof. You can find out more information about this at bipcot.org.
So today we have John Moss returning for another edition about unschooling and government school.
Our
He's a
first,
volunteer.
our first return guest. Congratulations!
Thank
somebody,
you.
somebody actually wanted to put up with us a second time. All right.
We had a lot of people message us because of that episode. They, I guess, when you put unschooling or homeschooling and stuff in titles, more people hear it than what we expect in our little echo chamber, and it is very refreshing to hear people say, "Wow!" We had Amanda on a few weeks ago, and she heard that episode, and it's drastically changed her life.
Wow, that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's one of our actually one of our higher listened to episodes, I think, yeah, we've
awesome.
actually we've had like Amanda wasn't even actually a voluntarist when she listened to the episode.
Yeah, that's the cool thing with homeschooling is that it really runs the gauntlet of everybody. I mean, conservatives homeschool, libertarians homeschool, liberals homeschool. I mean, there's it appeals more to some groups than others, but you really do get everybody in homeschooling. So yeah, it can attract a lot of people, sure.
Yeah, let me just finish up for people who haven't heard John Moss and didn't catch him the first time.
Go back and listen to it.
He's a voluntarist, peaceful parenter, and unschooler of a 7-year-old, and he runs the New Sons and Daughters of Liberty Facebook page, and he's also an admin on Raising Common Sense Anarchists. So he's a great source of information for unschooling, and I love spreading the word, on my own channel as well about unschoolers because so many, because I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and we definitely are planning on some mixture of homeschooling and unschooling, probably closer to unschooling. But I meet up with a lot of people, and they always ask me questions like, what is a typical day? Are you the only one? and it's funny because we know we're not the only one, but it's nice to have a resource where I can give them, here's interviews I've done of people who are actually doing it, and there's many different ways to do it. And so I find that people, and I've already had one woman that I've met that said that through the videos I've sent her, the interviews, that I've inspired her to homeschool her kids, which is pretty.
That's great to hear.
Pretty awesome. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I do have to say that you can learn a whole lot more about unschooling just talking to other people who do it.
Yeah.
I'll be very honest. I've never read a single book on homeschooling, on peaceful parenting. I've hardly read a lot of books on voluntarism, things like that. I get most of my knowledge from discussing ideas with people. I get so much more out of hopping into a community with tons of like-minded individuals, but who can each have their own take on something. You follow?
Yeah.
And from listening to the Seeds of Liberty podcast, right? Trademark pending, right?
Yeah, and that too, true. Podcasts and things like that. So if you're interested, the best advice I can give to start out with is find a Facebook group or a Reddit group or an internet group of whatever, and just start talking to other people who are doing it. Yeah, I figured it was a good time to bring this topic up. I also co-host on the Currency of Anarchy, and we just did we called it a Back to Unschool edition because it's September, it's that time of year, and so figure now's the time. People are interested in it, and there's also the parents who have had their kids in school for like a month now and maybe are starting to get frustrated with it again and want to do something, but they just don't know what to do. Pull them out. Pull your kids out of these prisons.
Yeah. There was a huge, I guess I stoked a fire the other day on Facebook and got about 1,000 comment thread about circumcision. And, someone was like, you got to do things for your kids that they're not going to like, you got to send them to school. You got to, you know, you got to bathe them, you got to do this, you got. I'm like, sending a child to school is probably one of the worst things you can do for that child.
That is the quickest way to destroy your child's creativity and desire to learn. To send them into a prison where they have to obey an authority figure all day. Their entire day is centered around a bell, like they're Pavlov's dogs. Like they're in math class, and maybe they're interested and they're learning about geometry or shapes or whatever, and the child is really interested, and then ding 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 ding, stop thinking about geometry, start thinking about science for the next 45 minutes or however long that class is. Yep. And what if they don't give a shit about science? And now you're taking them away from something they were really enjoying and forcing them to spend the rest of the day not thinking about what they were really interested in, which is why unschooling is a fantastic idea, because if your child is going with something, give it to them and let them run with it. Let them take it as far as they want to. Don't tell them to stop. That's one of the worst ways you can stifle creativity in your child.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's funny. I mean, yeah, of course, if they enjoy one thing and you take it away from it, that's one thing. But even if you have a kid who enjoys learning and gets something positive out of every class, even them, it's still, you know, stop and go, stop and stop and go, stop and go, and then people like wonder completely unironically why most people have ridiculously short attention spans and are swayed by, yeah, exactly, Dave.
My life's not regimented enough. I didn't pay enough attention in school.
ADD challenged friend over there.
I'm accepting disability checks soon for my ADD.
Yeah,
but
kidding. that's you know that's the world we live in, and people like actually wonder aloud why that is, because they think, oh, I have a pretty good attention span. Why all these? Why do you think? You're brought up to bounce from subject to subject and thing to thing to thing, and not keep a focus on anything for longer than 45 minutes. Or I think even, geez, back when I was in school, I think when they first extended, like tried to shove an extra period in there, they cut the classes down to like 38 minutes or something like that.
Even if you're interested, what are you going to learn in 38 minutes?
Yeah, and it's even less because by the time you get in and the bell rings and the teacher finally starts talking and goes through, like you actually, you know, if what you may actually learn is probably, you know, 25 minutes tops. So yeah.
So you were on the thing where they were doing 7 periods a semester? Was that what it was? Because something happened 9. My freshman year in high school, I had seven periods a semester, and then like my sophomore year it changed to where we have 4. So it was really weird. Like classes were like an hour and a half long.
No, we never. In PA and in New York where I went to school, we never had that in either place. It was always 7 to 9 periods, with one of them being lunch and sometimes one of them being a study hall. But other than that, it was, you know, the full day and just cram one after the other, and you just bounce from. And I was like, you know, we've discussed it before. I was somebody who's pretty good in school because I was able to memorize things and
obey.
Not really. Yeah, exactly. I was a good little status student, and I fell into the Prussian system quite well, and I did well, and I enjoyed most subjects. But you know, of course, I didn't think of it at the time. But yeah, it's just from one thing to another, and that's all it ever is. And then you grow up, and you know, like I said, people wonder why everybody is jumping from one subject to the next and can't. You know, it's by design. I feel so.
Absolutely, you're absolutely trained into it.
Yeah, it's part of the process.
I'll follow the order. Government schools, and let's call them that, government schools. Let's stop calling them public schools.
I always do. Yeah.
They are government schools.
Yeah.
Government schools don't give a shit about your kids at all. Their job right there is to crank out workers, taxpayers, and soldiers. That is all they want. They want to crank those out as quickly and efficiently as they can. And the best thing you can do, what can I do to stop it, is just stop playing along. Stop it. I changed my hours at work. I work at a casino. I work now overnight, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., just so I can be home during the day with my daughter to homeschool. The decision was that important for us.
Yeah, I remember listening to a Stefan Molyneux podcast, and he was saying three ways that the state makes or creates dependent citizens. Is the first thing they have to do is break up the husband-wife relationship, and then break up the parent-child relationship, and then make sure you herd all the kids to government school to so that they understand, government history, government economics, which is basically government economics is all the science of understanding monetary policy, foreign policy, right? Every
Yeah,
law that's what economics is in the
yeah, and
Keynesian
it's
sense.
and it's what they want you to know. They're not teaching you anything. They're basically telling you regurgitate this information or else you fail.
Yeah.
What's that quote about judging a fish by its ability to ride a bicycle or something
Yeah.
like that? It's public school to a T. That quote. It's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I tell the people that I hang out with a lot of homeschooling mothers, and I tell them, just by you,
He has to throw that in every time. It's not just I hang out with other homeschoolers. It's I hang out with a
Hot,
lot of homeschooling moms.
I didn't say hot. I just said homeschooling mothers.
hot, and bothered homeschool moms.
Their husbands are out at work,
Oh, and Danilo swoops in. What a dastardly
Come in,
soul-patched
come in,
mother
Mickey, soul-
lover.
This is how you know that Danilo's wife never listens to our show. Because it's one thing for us to needle him, but he jumps in right away with no hesitation.
No.
And yes. So it's funny. A lot of them they tell me about how they register their kids as homeschoolers by the state, so that CPS doesn't come after them. And I say, the first and foremost, like if you were to listen to what Carlos Morales says about why people call call CPS on other people, and one of the primary reasons is homeschooling, regardless is if you are, complying by the book, by the regulation, you're a registered homeschooler, it's still possible for your kid to be taken away and removed for the purpose of homeschooling. Homeschooling itself is an act of being anti-state, and you're considered an extremist, and you're a danger. You're an enemy of the state, just by you.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it freaks people out on almost a reefer madness type level. People hear homeschoolers, and they immediately think that I'm this super religious Mormon weirdo who has a sheltered child who doesn't do anything but sit in a room and read scripture all day. It's like you're not even close, not even in the ballpark of what it is we do.
Yeah, people just of course, because people just they assume things of what they don't understand because
Sure.
all that they've been told by the media, by the government itself, that homeschooling has always been frowned upon because well, I mean, for obvious reasons why it is, but it's always it's been marginalized and it's been singled out. And yes, it started out as a highly religious movement originally. Most of the I'm sure, I mean, even back as far as the Amish not wanting to have anything to do with it, like everybody who didn't want to have anything to do with the public schools as they were, or government schools as we like to call them, it was a religious that different religions, and they wanted to teach their children things, and for most people, they still think that's the same thing. They haven't bothered to investigate it any further. So they remember being told that, and it's just like, oh, you must be a religious nut, of course. Although, I mean, I am encouraged. I mean, Dave's thrown out numbers a couple of times during a couple episodes about the increase over the last, 10 years or so, or maybe 20.
Increase.
Yeah, or maybe 20 years. Which it was extremely small to start. So 70% is not that big from what it, I mean, in terms of what it was, but it's the trend is still going upward. And I was very encouraged by an article. I think my wife actually posted it. That might have been something as affluent as like Beverly Hills or somewhere like that. There was a story coming out about a lot of parents in areas like that are now going toward, like, not like the the actual actors that already homeschool or have tutors on set or whatever, but like just the quote unquote normal rich people are starting to drift more and more towards homeschools over private schooling. It was I think it was in one of the big Baltimore papers and in one of the it might have been the Times. I'm not sure. I don't remember where I read the actual article from. But just to read that, I was like, wow, this is that's encouraging to finally see people of that status, I guess that you want to say, and making major mainstream-ish type news. Like that's a big deal, and that's got to be encouraging for somebody like yourself who's involved in this now. I mean, we've discussed before. I'm going to be involved in it. My kids are only 4, so I still have another year or so before I'm really going to get moving in any direction. Although I hope I'm out of New York by the time that happens. That's my plan, because I don't want to have to, what Danilo was saying with the registration and all that. Like, I don't want to have to deal with that. I don't want to. I mean, I avoid a lot of other things myself personally, but I don't want to have to deal with that mess. Because the one agency that does scare me is CPS.
That's terrifying. Have my children stolen from me? Are you serious? That's a terrifying thought. And maybe there's some people who shouldn't have kids and who lay around and do drugs all day or whatever. I mean, whatever the case may be, neglect or whatever. But they don't discriminate, the CPS. They just, they hear something and they say, okay, let's go get them, and they come in with the cavalry. And
they have quotas, John.
It's unbelievable. What's that?
They have quotas.
Yeah, and to fill those quotas, they're taking children away from decent families who love their kids, and they're putting their kids in these foster homes where they just don't belong. All in all, it's a shitty situation and an even shittier bureaucracy that goes along with it.
So I have a pragmatic question to ask you. Do you think that the homeschooling crowd, once it becomes big enough, should state by state try to force some kind of tax exempt status? Hey, my kid's not going to this public school. I don't want to pay for it. You know what I'm saying? Should that be something that libertarians and homeschoolers kind of play into? And and I say this on a pragmatic thing because if we're going moral here, no libertarian should ever vote. But on a pragmatic thing, as a self-defense, if you could get rid of your property tax, is what pays for the school. If you could get rid of your property tax, if that gets known, if that exemption happens, that's going to push more people into homeschooling, and the government schools are going to go bankrupt.
Yeah, I'm a voluntarist. I don't think anyone should be paying any kind of taxes at all. But let's be realistic. We live in a world where we're paying taxes, and they send men with guns after you if you don't pay these taxes. If a town could get together and have some kind of referendum or a vote and say, hey, listen, this is largely a homeschooling community. You don't need these property taxes. I would love to see government officials defend why they would still need those taxes in that situation.
What kind of percentage do you think would have to put? I'm thinking here's the problem. They could always ship in more immigrants to a school, right? But no, let's say legitimately 30-40% of the people pull their kids out of the public school. Any business loses 40 or 30% of their clientele, they're going to go belly up. That's.
Oh, I see.
But the government's not a business, though.
I know the government. I know the government isn't a business.
It's a really shitty one.
I know that no businesses.
Sure.
Businesses can't put a gun in your face and tell you to buy. They go bankrupt.
Right.
I guess they would just probably print more money. That's what they do with everything. I don't know what to do. Okay, let's print more money and throw some more money at it.
The federal government doesn't have a property tax on you. They have eminent domain, but they don't have a property tax. The property taxes come from the states. So the state is also in charge of their own Department of Education for each state. So I think that would have to be some kind of deal that homeschoolers would have to, a homeschooling tax exemption to me makes a lot of pragmatic sense. If you want your kid to go to a public school, you should pay for it. If you don't, forcing someone else to pay for that doesn't make much sense. Even if you're not a libertarian or an anarchist or whatever, even when you hear that laid out that simply, forcing someone else to pay for your child's education is morally bankrupt. And that should be a very simple even on both sides of this issue, that should be a very simple, hey, that person's child is not going to this school. That person is not going to have any children. Like me, I don't have children. I'm paying for schools. Like, why should I have to? I should be exempt unless you have kids in the school. You should be exempt. And people are going to say, oh, well, there's poor people. How are they going to get educated? That's not my problem. I didn't have those kids. That's start a charity.
You don't understand, Dave. You just have to pay your fair share. All right, stop bitching.
Well, come on, Dave. You don't want to have a bunch of stupid people around you, do you?
Oh yeah,
that's why
yeah.
They have.
Right,
that's why they have. That's one of those. That's one of the more, I guess, famous memes for in like anti-homeschool.
John Green.
John Green. Yeah, exactly. Where he says, I don't, it's something to that effect. Where I don't want. I don't want to be surrounded by stupid people. I'm happy to pay my taxes because
I don't want to be surrounded by stupid people. He's surrounded by people who don't know how the Fed works, how economics work. They can tell you all about the Pythagorean theorem, though. They learned that in school.
They can tell you all what Kim Kardashian tweeted last week, but.
Well, that fits into the short attention span thing that I was talking about earlier. But sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say U.S. public schools. I mean, we're not even cracking. We're sorry for the collectivist language, but they're not even cracking the top 10 anymore in math and science. I mean, these are the places you're sending your kids to go to school. They're not teaching them anything. The literacy rates are sliding. My daughter was miles ahead of her class in reading in kindergarten, and they just flat refused to push her along. So your kids aren't learning anything. You got to get them out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got a quick point, and I don't know if you've ever heard this, John. What public schools? What city public schools spends the most per student in the country?
What city's public schools?
Yes.
If I had to guess, it would probably be something like Chicago, New York.
I was just gonna say Chicago.
No, it's Baltimore.
Baltimore.
They pay almost $19,000 a year for each student, and their school system is completely bankrupt. Mm-hmm. They can't pay for this. They're borrowing money. That's why Baltimore's going bankrupt for their schools and their police unions and all their other unions they have. But here's the thing. If all those people in Baltimore that are paying all these taxes, which they're not, these are federal loans for the city of Baltimore. But let's play like what would be really happening. Do you think that $18,000 you could not personally, with $18,000, just if the city of Baltimore said, here, Miss Johnson, here's $18,000 to educate your child however you see fit, do you think there would be smarter kids coming out of Baltimore or dumber kids?
Yeah. Well, well, depends on the person, but yeah.
Well, it depends on the diaper.
Statistically, yes, of course. They would probably, I mean, I could probably educate my entire neighborhood for $19,000 a year.
Absolutely. I mean, you know how much I spend a year on educating my daughter? Essentially nothing. Nothing. I mean, we have an internet connection, but if she went to public school, we'd have that anyway. So as far as I'm concerned, that's not really a homeschool cost for me. Maybe it is for some parents, and if that's the case, it's worth it. You've got to get your kids on the internet. I mean, Google and YouTube. I mean, they can find any information they want on the internet, and you don't need to send your kids to public education. You can educate at home for free. What else do I spend money on? I don't know, the occasional museum ticket. We'll go to the museum. I don't know, most parks are free. We can take nature walks whenever we want. Learning is not meant to be limited to a classroom. When you unschool, everything is a lesson. I cook a lot at home, and my daughter helps me with that. She's learning fractions and not even realizing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't even call what happens in government school learning either, because to me, learning is something that happens voluntarily when you're interested in something, right? When you're not interested and you're forced to memorize it and then regurgitate it, to me, that's more like indoctrination. So
it is, and the kids are being indoctrinated too. I mean, my daughter used to have lockdown drills at her school to simulate like a live shooter in the school. They're trying to condition these kids to police state and all that stuff. It's just terrible.
Yeah, yeah. So it's yeah, you're right. There's really no way that the state can continue to function with obedient citizens without a very enhanced and colossal government school system to
Well,
keep them in place. Keep them down, so they
well,
know
when
their inferiority. Go ahead.
yeah, when they're in school, it's like, here's what to learn. This is true. This is what you're going to learn. Repeat after me.
Hmm.
When you bring them home and homeschool, it's, Daddy, what's this? Okay, well, it's the other thing. Okay,
Yeah.
well, how does it work? Why?
Yeah.
Why does it do this? Why is this? Why?
Yeah.
And you encourage that, and they don't encourage that in public school. Like, what do you mean why? Because this is it. This is the way it is. This is the way I told you. This is, I'm the teacher. And when you say shit like that, the kids just tune it right out. They don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
So what do you do? If you're listening to this podcast and you're like, okay, well, you guys are talking a big game. What do I do? I'm ready to unschool my child. What do I do? First thing you got to do is check your local state laws, because homeschooling does vary state by state. And I know we're anarchists and don't give a shit about the state and the rules and all that, but as we discussed, CPS is a pretty dangerous organization. And I don't mind messing with bureaucrats, but bureaucrats that can steal my child from me, I'm not going to mess with too much. Here in Connecticut, all I had to do was write a letter to the superintendent saying, okay, I'm withdrawing my daughter, and we'll be homeschooling in accordance with statute XYZ, whatever it was, and that's that, signed my name and my wife's name, and that was it. And we were on our own. We didn't have to go in for evaluations or testing. We didn't have to tell them what we were teaching. It was just pull your kids and boom, you're on your own. You're good to go. That's not the case in every state. Shockingly, shockingly, Connecticut is one of the best states to homeschool. And as psychotically liberal and big government as they are one of the best homeschool states.
Is that the only positive about Connecticut, from what I recall, as far as laws go?
Technically, you can open or conceal carry in Connecticut. Over in Rhode Island, you can't carry at all. You can carry here in Connecticut. I don't because the state's full of psychotic liberals who will shout at me in the supermarket for having a gun. So I don't open carry. But yes,
I don't have that problem down here, John. If people don't see you without a gun, they go, "What's that guy up to? He doesn't have a gun."
What state are you in?
I'm in Alabama.
Oh shit! They practically hand them out in Happy Meals down there.
No, it's not that bad.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, as far as how to get started, yeah, I mean, I agree, obviously, I mean, because I'm here in New York where the laws are quite stringent.
You don't say.
That's why I want to get the heck out of here, so I don't have to deal with them. But yes, of course.
Channel your inner Kurt Russell, man.
Thank you.
You guys have crazy gun laws too. Like you're only allowed like slingshots and muzzle loaders and shit like that.
Yeah, it's yeah. Oh, come on. They got rid of the ridiculous 7 rounds. They had no choice because after Prince Andrew did it. Within a couple of months, they realized that nobody makes 7-round magazines, and they had to backtrack. And first they said, well, you can have a 10-round, but you can only have 7 in it. And then when everybody said that's ridiculous, they finally had to capitulate and said, okay, fine, you can have your 10 rounds back. But all the laws here are horrible. But yeah, obviously the first thing is to check your laws. I would encourage people that if they're pursuing this avenue to, if you have to, consider moving because that's, like I said, that's what I'm going to do. Because the other thing, at least for me, I think one of the biggest concerns and or flat out rejections I get when this topic comes up, and I try to bring it to other people, is, oh, well, we can't afford that because somebody has to stay home with the kids. Well, you should really look into your finances and look into what exactly you're spending money on, because most people who don't think they can homeschool because both parents work currently assume that, well, both of us work because we have to work. Well, that may be true to some extent, but how much money are both of you spending on travel to and from work? How much are both of you spending on wardrobe and or uniforms, for work? How much money, how much money are you spending, if you don't bring your lunch, if you have to buy lunch when you're like all these things? How much money do you and your partner both spend at work, not just to make the money? How much money are you laying out in order to get that? And a lot of people, once they start crunching those numbers, you realize, well, wait a minute, if I don't have to spend all this stuff, even if we have to go down to now one car, or whatever it is, like all these expenses that most people just take for granted. Well, if you just get rid of some of these things that you don't need because one of you stays home, well then it makes it a lot more affordable. Which actually, I just wanted just to go back to something Dave was saying earlier about the tax situation and what it would take for some kind of rebate or with the credit or whatever it is. I would say that if you got that percentage of people, if you had 30-40% of the people, you just flat out to stick with the anarchist motto, just flat out refuse to pay it. Just say, we're not going to pay this anymore, because that's all it would take. If you get that kind of numbers, I've said this repeatedly about any of the taxes. If you get those kind of numbers in any one area that just flat out refuse to, what the quickest way to destroy any law is to make it unenforceable. And how do you do that? By people just not. Dude, we outnumber the state agents in every situation, in every capacity, in every area.
Can I play devil's advocate here for a second?
Well, just hold on. All I'm saying is, because you're saying, if people got together and played the state card for pragmatic reasons, I would posit that you don't even have to. But that's another thing. Whether you just opt out of paying or you try to get the people in your town organized to say, hey, let's go to the town, let's go to the city, let's go to the state, whatever it is, and say we want to credit or whatever, whichever route you take, that's even more money now. And a lot of people they just assume they can't afford it. But if you knock out all those other bills and then you knock out that tax some way or somehow, how can you honestly use that as an excuse anymore? Because I think just those two things alone will show you the people that, for better or worse, actually really care about their kids and really don't.
You gotta weigh the options, and you gotta say, how important is this to my family that I homeschool and get my kids out of here? Weigh how important it is. Yeah, move if you have to. Cut your expenses if you have to. Like I said, I changed my hours to overnight to do this. I understand, not everybody can do things like that, but where there's a will, there's a way. I hate to use stupid cliches like that, but it's so true. If you really want to do this, you can do this. Maybe in a few minutes we can get to dispelling a couple of myths that I hear about homeschooling.
Should I start an unschooling co-op? Hey, yeah, just drop your kids off and some food, and I'll make sure they don't get shot or kill each other.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
No, but the whole thing I was going to say to Jeremy's point is, let me. I'm not too sure on this. How do sheriffs get paid? Like, from what taxes do they get paid? On average, it's not property taxes.
No. I guess it depends, because I'm actually in one of the worst places to ask that question, because Nassau County has, I think, the only unelected sheriff in the entire country. If there may be one other one, but
that's
as far
unconstitutional, because that's flat out in the Constitution.
Thank you. Yes, we have the only as far as I know, we have the only unelected sheriff in the entire country.
Was he appointed by the Nassau County Commission or something?
Yeah.
That's odd. Well, the county commission is elected, so
no, it's no, I don't even remember who it is that actually appoints them, but
somebody
within the government that appoints
for this argument, if the sheriff department isn't tied to property taxes, the sheriffs are still getting paid, and they're the ones who evict people for not paying property taxes. So even if you had 30% of a community not paying their property taxes, all the sheriff's department has to do is go one by one, because they're paid by the county. So one by one, evicting people one a day. Hey, you're not allowed to be on this property because you won't pay your property tax, and that's Losing your house is quite tragic.
I understand that, Dave. I'm just like
In all other cases, I kind of
no.
agree with you, but like
This is
that would take a lot of people to straight up say we're not paying our property taxes because of schools,
I
and them not to enforce that.
I don't think you realize what kind of numbers 30 or 40% would be in a certain area, man. Like I said, you could
I'm
go
just
the
playing
other
devil's
route.
advocate.
No, of course. Is there risk involved? Absolutely. It's the same we've discussed before. It's the same thing with the IRS and being somebody who wants to fight the whole income tax thing. There's risks involved, yes. But if you get a certain percentage of the population on your side and willing to they it's the whole idea they can't arrest everybody. They can't. They just
They
can't.
don't have
And more
to.
no, because the more people that keep doing that, then other people will see, and if anything else, they'll be pissed off that they're still paying, and they'll not pay out of spite because they'll be like, well, if they're not going to pay, then I'm not going to pay, and that's how we crashed your system.
No, I
Obviously,
agree. I agree.
we're far away from numbers on anything like that. I was just positing that I think if you got it that high, if it's only like 10, 15% of the population, you're absolutely right. Yes, most likely it would be enforced, but there's every law, there's only a certain amount that can be enforced. Once enough people oppose, and it's different for every law, and it's whatever the state wants to protect itself, however the state want to protect itself, and which areas where their line is drawn, where they'll be like, well, okay, if enough people do this, then we're going to implore all this force to stop it, or wherever that is. It varies for each law, but there's a number, man. There's a number for every single one of them where it's just you get enough people, it becomes unenforceable, and they can no longer do anything about it.
I 100% agree. I would just logistically, it would have to be an overwhelming percent for that, especially the way property taxes are tied, because essentially you don't own your land in this country; you rent it
Oh,
from
yeah,
the
absolutely.
state. So it's it's when rubber meet. Everyone wants to be an anarchist until until the time to hold a gun. So it's
Well, I've said it a ton of times before. It's all about putting things into action. It's doing it. It's living it.
so
So some people have to take these risks, and when they do, it helps show others that it is possible, and and that applies
yeah.
to
It's
everything.
I
And I think
mean
this is another one. I'd be
no.
willing to stay here and fight if I have to. If I can't move out of the state, well, I'm going to fight the laws as much as I possibly
Yeah,
can.
yeah. It's funny when I talk to people about homeschooling or unschooling, or even like if you refuse, let's say, vaccines for your kid, then they ask, "Isn't that illegal?" And it just makes me, I try not to laugh, but because I know they're serious, but it's really, an appeal to authority, and it's just, it just demonstrates the whole fear-based uh, culture that we live in. That everything that they do is based on is it legal or is it illegal, right? So basically, you're admitting that you are the property of the politicians, right? The politicians are your masters, and it's just it's so sad when I hear that, and and you got to speak gently to these people because you don't want to say you're a slave because that's not always the best answer in such a situation. But yeah, I mean, I say, and then I start going, it's not about legal or illegal, right? It's just about do you really think that your child will learn the best in a group of 30 kids or 20 kids? And I tell people, like, people accuse me, you think all teachers are evil? No, I don't think all teachers are evil. I think there's really genuinely, compassionate and kind-hearted people who want to be teachers. They want to teach and inspire kids. But the problem is they're functioning in a monopoly that does not respond to it has no feedback. It, doesn't respond to incentives, and so it's an inflexible and oppressive system. And so, regardless if they want to inspire or not, you only get 38 minutes to inspire, and then ding, 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 next
That
class.
that reminds me that reminds me of a point I wanted to make earlier, as how you were saying Baltimore schools spent $19,000 a student. If you guys think that's being spent on the students directly, you're out of your minds. I don't necessarily mean you guys, but like anybody listening, you're out of your mind if you think that this money is going toward the kids. Go check their textbooks. They probably have textbooks from 1997. They probably have computers that are, with like Pentium 2s in them. And they probably have all this old, outdated shit and all this old books. The money is going to these teachers' unions, okay? They're not going toward the students. These teachers' unions get these teachers in these contracts where they're owed pensions and all this other shit. And that's where the bulk of your money is going. That's why another reason why it's so important to get your kids out, because the few teachers that do care, they're kind of overshadowed by these grumpy dinosaurs who know they have job protection. They're not going anywhere.
Well, it's not only that, John, but the curriculum that they're taught is forced curriculum. It's not like when you go in. It's not like when you go into college and you're in economics 301. It's not like that. It's not like where you're actually getting to hear what someone's genuinely thinking about the subject. It's, hey, you're going to do this or you're going to get fired, teacher. Hey, and you're tenured, so you can't really get fired as long as you just play along. So just shut up, do your job, and collect your paycheck. That the unions destroy incentives for workers to work harder.
And we can take the anarchy slant here and say that the good teachers would do far better work and make far more money in a truly free market where they were able to, sell their skills as a teacher, a tutor, a math tutor, or whatever. And they could probably do a lot better and teach a lot better if they didn't have this big giant state bureaucracy over their shoulders saying, do this, do this, do this, and, do this. They would fare a lot better in a freer market.
I 100% agree, John. You nailed it right there. And, you tell a teacher that, my aunt is she's a special needs teacher for the state school, for one of the state schools, and me and her get into big arguments about the AEA, which is the Alabama Education Association, which is the big teachers union and stuff. And and I say, do you know that there's 3 state senators on the AEA payroll? They don't work. They work 1 day a year. They come in and go, yeah, I work here, and they get paid $800,000 a year.
Oh my God, are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. And they're state senators.
That's not a conflict of interest at all.
So I sit here and I tell her we're paying into these schools. I'm sure there's some schools downtown, if we're going to be pragmatic in this approach, that could use $800,000. Wouldn't you agree? Even if it was for just updated textbooks or better gym facilities or what the fuck ever,
And that's what makes me laugh about these statists who say, oh, we need to spend more money on our education. Like, are you kidding? We already outspend the entire world on education. How much more do you want to spend? And you know what? If the money was actually going to textbooks and updated computer labs and updated everything, I might not have that big of a problem with it, other than the morality of theft and taxation and all that stuff. But they don't spend it on that stuff. They don't buy things for the kids. They spend it all on teacher salaries and, bureaucratic bullshit behind the scenes.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was going to say it's not because, I grew up. I was raised by two educators who, both have now turned their back on the system finally after all these years. But I to stick up for teachers just a little bit, it's not, you said it, the bureaucracy, because a lot of it isn't even the teachers. Yes, they're promised these pensions, but those fall into the, the unfunded liabilities that every other, that would now for like federally and nationally, I think goes up to like 300 trillion dollars or something like that is estimated now. If you add them all together. But it's administrative costs, because on top of the teachers, because it's not like they flood the schools with teachers, because they just keep adding more and more kids to the classroom. There's some places where there's 30, 35, 40 kids in a class.
It's a one teacher. I mean, how?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not the teachers. Like, yeah, they get promised money, but up front, some of them get paid, but a lot of it just there's more administrators for every teacher. Like they have like one administrator or two administrators, and then secretaries, and then it's the office space scenario: boss on top of boss on top of boss on top of boss on top of boss, with all their little underlings,
it's
and
like
they're all paid with the same. That's where the money goes. But people say, oh, if we just spend more money, because aside from the fact that most of them don't understand basic economics, they don't understand that like you said, the money's not going to the kids, but they're conditioned to, well, if we just throw more money at the problem, if we just throw more money at the problem, we're not throwing enough money at the problem. That must be it. Because the teachers unions get their base rallied up for raises and whatever else it is, and they go out there and they tug on the heartstrings of people and say, oh yes, you have to vote for the bigger budget, and you have to vote for this. And the teachers unions, of course, know full well that the money's not actually going to go even to the teachers, much less the kids.
Yeah, I love that. Vote for this or else you hate the kids.
Well, exactly, but that's
a lot of teachers unions aren't voluntary.
No, yeah, I've
a lot of unions aren't voluntary.
In Alabama, it is. They cannot force you to be in the AA, but if you're not in the AA, it's worse. It's so much worse to be a teacher.
Is Alabama a right to work state? Is that?
Oh, of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I have always found that so ludicrous that people champion that. It's like you have to get a law passed so you have a right to work where you want for what? No, that's ridiculous. You just do it anyways. No, that's what right to work means that you can't be forced into the unions.
It means that, and also employers
status think it's a positive thing.
No.
It's ridiculous.
It means that you cannot be forced into a union in government jobs, and also it means that you cannot. You can be fired for any reason. That's the big thing why a lot of liberals are against it, because.
But you should be able to.
I walk in. Hey, I don't like the way your glasses sit on your nose, Jeremy. You're fired, and you have no legal. And that scares the shit out of liberals, because they think a job is a right.
Well, of course. But if you didn't sign an explicit contract with your employer beforehand, then that's your fault. And if he wants to fire you, he wants to fire you. Well, I would just say it's just funny because a lot of people would think that's a good thing, and in the statist paradigm, I guess it is. But it's just funny that because when people get excited when they talk about passing that law, we're trying to become a right to work state. Like, you have to get a law passed to have the right to work. Are you insane?
Coach brother Shield, you Coach brother Shield.
Yes. As you can tell by my fabulous backdrop here, I'm rolling in the Coke dough.
Rolling in the dough.
I'm gonna mail you a Coach Enterprises or whatever their corporate logo is, so you can put it up behind your thing as a joke.
So another way for me that the government schools kind of break up the family is they really take up the most valuable time during the day, right? Like the kids have to wake up at absurd hours, right? And so they don't get a moment to relax in the morning, right? And then they rush off to school. And then most of them have after school activities, right? Because the parents work, right? So they want them to keep them busy, and many of them get home 5, 6 o'clock, right? And so you only have a few hours there where you got to do your homework, eat dinner, chat with your family, and go to bed early so you can go to sleep and wake up early again the next day to repeat the whole thing, right? So you're destroying the whole free time of the week. And then on the weekend, all that free time is like stress, because you're like, we got to enjoy this because we only have 2 days to enjoy each other. And
conditioning.
And if one of those days, something awful happens, then it's like everybody's stressed out. It's really amazing.
Conditioning.
Of course.
They're conditioning you to be a 9-to-5 tax cow. That's exactly what they're prepping you for.
Yeah.
Danilo, are you planning to move out of New York to escape regulation hell?
Yeah, we are thinking about it. We're still considering which destination to go, but yeah, New York is pretty oppressive. So,
may I not suggest West Virginia?
Not suggest why?
I just wouldn't go there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking at New Hampshire in a year. I mean, their homeschool laws are pretty much equal to Connecticut. Their laws are you write the letter to pull your child out of school, and you're supposed to keep a portfolio of everything your child does, any worksheets or projects or anything you do. You're supposed to keep a portfolio. But legally, you're not obligated to show that to anybody. So it's almost like you don't need to keep a portfolio.
How do you keep a port? You know, it's funny. I've actually
Makes no sense.
well, no, to them it makes sense because you have to have some kind of evidence. But I think I might have heard Brett Venat talking about it on the School Sucks podcast about how that was one of the things that he actually, when he was a public school teacher, and he was involved in the system, that he actually thought that was kind of a cool thing when he was stepping out of that, because it's like, yeah, if you don't have to, but it's still cool to, you know, if to hold on to for later in life, so you could look at it as maybe as a proud parent or as the
well,
kid.
then,
Here's my portfolio. You can't look in it.
But as you're saying, but the whole point is not only, I mean, you could,
maybe
but
keep one for yourself. Sure, my
well,
daughter.
yeah, but how do you, but realistically, how do you keep a portfolio of a real world education?
You don't.
How do you exactly, unless you're taking pictures of everything? And that's what
Timmy
you're putting in.
learned how to tie his shoe yesterday. The loop, swoop, and pull.
Well, not even that. I was just talking about going out to, like John said, to like the museums or the nature walks. Like that's how you spend your day. That's how your kid learns and wants to do things. Yeah. How do you keep that in a portfolio?
It's intangible. It's,
Here, let me take you on
an
a
X
tour.
factor.
Well, there are states that require it. So yeah, here you go. Let me take you on a tour. Come hang out with us one day. You'll see what we do. Here's your portfolio.
I can say this as an unschooling parent that, I mean, there are a lot of days when we don't do anything. We just kind of hang around and chill out all day. I mean, you really got it right when you were describing a day in public school. In the morning, rush around, because every parent out there listening with kids in public schools is pretty familiar with this phrase. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes turns into 15, turns into 20, turns into where's your fucking shoes? The bus is coming right now. And it's rushing around. It's crazy. It's intense. They get on the bus, they go, they forgot their lunch. You got to get in the car. You can bring it to school. Who needs it? Who needs it? We homeschool, and my daughter wakes up whenever she wakes up. She comes into my room and nudges me and asks to borrow my laptop because she wants to play Minecraft. And she makes her own breakfast. She'll get her own toast with peanut butter or whatever, you know, yogurt or a banana or whatever she can grab. She gets her own breakfast. She sets up her Minecraft, and she's good for hours. And she's shown me cities that she has built on Minecraft. Like, it blew my mind that a 7-year-old did this.
Yeah. One of the funniest questions I get asked is, you know, when I talk about homeschooling, and they say, "So, how many hours a day do you homeschool?" And to me, that you know, it refers back to our own government schooling, where, you know, you go to school at these, you know, block of hours, and then at this block you're not at school.
Did you
Right?
do you tell them you left your time card at home?
So I'm like, no, it's not like that. Like, you know, like Jeremy was saying, you know, there is no separation between living and learning, right? You're always learning, you know. You're always learning. So you know, I like to describe it as you know, passion-driven education, or child-driven education, or some people say life education, something like that. But I mean, to think that learning only occurs in a certain block when you sit down and you put a pen to a piece of paper and you start writing letters and numbers, no. You know,
You're absolutely right. And that brings me to the point of people who homeschool as opposed to unschool. When you're homeschooling with the curriculum, now this may be miles better than public education, because at least you control what goes into your child's mind, but you're still doing the routine at home. I mean, maybe you're not waking up ass early in the morning, they rush around and all that, but you're still doing a regimented, this is time for this is time for this is time for that. And which is why I was really drawn to unschooling, is because I really believe that if a child is learning something, geez, leave them alone. Let them run with it. Let them take it as far as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. When I talk to people, I usually say homeschooling. I don't say unschooling. Number one, because most people are not familiar. But number two, even just the word homeschooling is radical enough for most people to like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I just start from there, and then I say there's a wide spectrum of homeschoolers, right? You got the homeschoolers that are like they do exactly what is done in government school just at home, right? That's the like that's the first level, and then all the way to the to the unschooling level where it's just complete freedom. So and then I
I
introduced the word unschooling. So
I first learned the word unschooling at Pork Fest, not this past one, but the one before 2014. I was at a homeschool meet and greet, and I had known that I wanted to homeschool for a while, and I was going to Pork Fest, and they just happened to have this meet up there, a homeschool meet and greet. So I ran into these two ladies, Connie and I can't remember the other one's name, and they were telling me that they were unschoolers. They said, "Well, what the hell is unschooling? I've never heard of this." They told me what it was, and I was like, "These ladies are batshit insane. They let their kids sit around and play Minecraft all day." I'm not happy. But it was intriguing, so I listened to them, and the more they spoke, the more they made sense, and the more questions I had, the more they were right there with a counter answer to it. And I started thinking, I was like, wow, this really isn't some kind of fringe weirdo thing. Like, these people are actually doing it, and their kids are right here, and they're the most well-behaved, well-adjusted children I've ever seen. So I mean, I hate to use anecdotal evidence like that, but when it's right there, it's really hard to argue with.
Mm-hmm.
I looked into unschooling a little bit more, and I gotta say, I really like it, and I can't imagine doing it any other way.
So let's. What's on everyone's mind that's hearing this, that has children, that's in a spousal relationship or has a partner or whatnot? How did you have any friction from your wife for this idea? I mean, and if so, how did you deal with it?
I had no resistance from my wife at all. I pretty much came home and said, "Hey, listen, I learned about this method of unschooling. We've wanted to homeschool for a while." And I said, this is the gist of it. It's kind of life-led learning, and the child kind of learns whatever they're interested in. And as lucky as I was, she was on board right away, which I absolutely, I'm not a religious person, but that right there was a blessing. And there's really no other word for it, because I mean, if your spouse is not on board, this could cause some major problems. I mean, this is an issue that you both need to be on board with, and if you're both not on board 100%, there's gonna be issues. So try and work this out with your spouse beforehand.
Yeah, I can imagine it would lead to many fights.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially if one is really dead set, oh no, children need to go to school, and you're over here, well, I'm learning about this homeschooling thing, and what if your spouse digs their heels in the sand and says, no, they need to go to school. Everybody goes to school. It's what you do. You're gonna have some problems. I mean, I would have, because I don't want my daughter going to these places, because I know how it is in there. I know what they do. We had her in public school kindergarten for a year, so I was able to see, up close, what she was bringing home, what kind of books she was reading, what kind of punishments they dole out for stupid things like talking in class. My daughter got a note home. She had a behavioral notice for sitting there twirling her hair.
Seriously?
Yeah, twirling her hair. She got a behavioral.
So sad.
She wasn't paying attention.
Well, in fairness, did she ask permission to twirl her hair first?
That was probably
that was the problem.
I mean, why do you send your kids to an institution where they have to ask permission to use the bathroom? I mean, come on.
Well,
Because they'll be goofing off if they could just go wherever they want, nilly-willy.
I mean, maybe that's what they need. Maybe these kids need to goof off a little. I mean, my kid's a nut sometimes. She's really goofy, and we encourage that. Why stifle that?
absolutely.
So,
I was being facetious.
I was just gonna say. I mean, I think most people just they look at it like, well, of course people have to go there because that's what happened to them. They were told they had to go and they went, and the same thing happened to their parents. But to touch on what you were saying with with Dave's question about the if one partner is not involved. I mean, I think that the three of us here that are either unschooling or going to be unschooling are all lucky to have our spouse. Because Danilo, your wife's obviously, well, she wants to follow the rules for it, but she's at least on board with the whole idea of homeschooling, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same position. That's we've talked about that before. I was very lucky that I knew that I was going to at the very least homeschool my kids before they were even born, because my wife and I talked about it when we first got together about the idea of having kids and what we wanted to do, and we both had said that homeschooling was something we were interested in. And I heard about unschooling through I think it was Dana Martin. I think I heard her interviewed on Berwick's show. And that was the first time like you, when you went to Pork Fest and just heard it from these people. I had the same reaction to Dana Martin the first time I heard it. She's insane. This woman's crazy. What the hell is she talking about? But then when I started following her stuff a little bit more, and then I saw her kids, who I think all of them or at least at the time were 15 and under, and I think all but one of them, and that was like the youngest one, had at least one business up and running already.
I know, right?
And two of them had like 3 or 4 different businesses running at the same time that they were turning like a minimal, but
They're
still turning a
failures.
profit. at like 8, 9, 11, 13 years old, they're running their own businesses. And
But capitalism is evil, Jeremy.
well, yeah. Well, see,
It suppresses the working class. Okay,
See, that's the funny
you
thing.
bourgeoisie. Oh, anyways.
Well, most casual socialists and communists who would make claims like that against capitalism would actually think it's cute that a kid's doing it, and they wouldn't equate the two. They wouldn't see it as capitalism. They would just see it as a kid doing so, like a lemonade stand. Oh, because even some of them get up in arms.
Jeremy, that's why there's child labor laws, Jeremy.
Well, of course. If it wasn't for the government and the child labor laws, your kid would still be working in a coal mine. Gosh,
Exactly.
don't.
What if the kid is the boss?
Well,
What then?
exactly.
Do we have a? I think we just divided by 0.
So I do have to say, this past year when I went back to Pork Fest, I ran into Connie, the lady who taught me about unschooling, and I gotta say, I walked up to her and I said, "Thank you." It was so amazing what I've seen the last year out of my daughter. So I feel like I have to say that, because earlier I said her ideas were batshit insane, and at the time I did think that, but
Well, no, it's.
yeah, I do need to follow up with that. I said,
I didn't hear about unschooling until I was already a voluntarist, and even when I heard it, I was like, I don't know, this is kind of batshit insane.
yeah,
Because you always think about what you would do if this was your parents letting you be unschooled. Like, I'd be fucking the Xbox. I would already be on my 5th Xbox.
no shit, right? I mean,
But I'm like the worst. I mean, I'm the fucking worst. But what does that mean? Like, I could go into a career in video games or something, So,
and that's what I tell parents. That's what I wanted to get into myth, and we can do that in a second. But yeah, I mean, if you're into video games, go learn computers, go learn computer programming and computer science, and go follow your passions and do what you're good at. You never know what you can come up with.
The way I look at unschooling is, child-driven education is, it's done from a state of humility, that we don't know what they should know, right, for the rest of their lives. We don't know what's going to be applicable in 20 years, right, or even in 10 years. It's like I tell people, like 20 or like let's say 25 years ago. Or 30, 25 years ago, before the internet, who could have predicted the internet, right? And in 25 years, what's going to happen then, right? And so it's really amazing how people are so sure.
Sorry.
What was that?
I said robot overlords. Keep going.
Yeah, so it's really amazing to me when people are so sure this is what you have to know to be a success in life. How do you know that? How do you know where the world's going to be in 25 years? It's such a statement of hubris and arrogance to say that, and that's why I love voluntarism and anarchy, is that that's what we're saying. We don't know how people should live their lives. We don't know what kids should know because every kid is unique. Every kid has unique abilities and weaknesses, and you know, let the child be free to pursue whatever interests you know they come across, because you never know where that's going to lead. You never know, right?
Ooh, pick me, pick me, pick me. Ooh, I know how people should live their lives.
Yes.
By leaving me the fuck alone.
Good one, Dave.
Right, exactly. So yeah,
There's your bumper.
that's how I look at unschooling. It's done from a state of humility, and the same thing with volunteerism. It's all about humility.
Sure.
I think the idea that people, you know, because I did the same thing. I thought unschooling was batshit crazy when I first heard about it, because I assumed, just like Dave was saying, that, you know, you think of yourself and you think of, but it is, if you're into video games, that's one thing. You could definitely go into computer stuff. But I look back at myself, and I did become obsessed with video games, but I don't think it was because I liked them. And that I said, and I've talked to other people, and I think this is also the case for, you needed to find a way to release.
Escape.
Yeah.
And it's
Jinx.
it's very easy to become obsessed with something when you're forced into this structured lifestyle. And, you know, as we were talking about earlier about the getting up early and being at school like all day, you know, like getting up early. I remember, I mean, I was a bus driver back in the day, and my first stop picking up kids was at like 6:15 in the morning. Like I had to be there. I had to be at the. Well, no, I actually, once I got to keep the bus at my house, I was allowed to leave a little later. But I had to pick my first kid up by 6:15 in the morning.
That's
6:15.
How many times did you smoke the weed in that bus?
I
Be
never-
honest. Be honest.
Never, not once.
Not once.
I actually
Okay.
did.
All right.
I did get fired for failing a drug test, but I absolutely never smoked on the bus.
Okay.
be an improvement. How many
But-
stories
but-
do we hear about public drivers being drunk taking kids to school?
I
Like,
was-
we
I- I was not, what's his name? What was the guy? Otto. I was not Otto. All right.
Otto and
but
Otto
what I was
from Simpsons.
Yes, right, exactly. But what I was saying is, I think for some people, at least a lot of the ones I've encountered, and again, obviously this is anecdotal, but because you're in the structured environment, it's very easy to become obsessed with something like video games or anything else, because that limited amount of free time you have, that's all you want to do. So if you look back on your childhood, like if you're somebody who went to public school and you're presented with the idea of homeschooling or unschooling, and your first idea is, which is a common myth, oh, your kids are just going to run wild, they're not going to learn anything, they're just going to sit and play video games all day. Because you think of yourself, and maybe not just because you enjoyed playing them, but because that's all you did with the limited amount of time you were given.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's all you had.
If
you had all the time in the world, would you really be playing video games all day long? Wouldn't you get bored?
Look, if I only had an hour to myself every day, and that's a stretch for public schools, because like you said, they go to school until 3, 4 o'clock. They come home, they've got 2 hours of homework, they've got their karate practice or football or baseball or
Homework.
whatever it is, yeah, and more homework. And then
I didn't do
somewhere
that.
in there, you got to fit in dinner and a shower and go to bed and wake up and do it all again the next day. You have no free time. So yeah, the hour of free time you get, yeah, all I want to do is play my video games. But if I had all day to do what I want, playing the video games would probably get a little boring after a few hours, but maybe I can look up some videos on computer programming. Maybe I can find some books on programming.
Yeah, I interviewed Katie Testa, who's also an unschooler, and she mentioned this interesting concept that there's two different types of questions. There's the question where you know the answer, or the true question where you don't know the answer. So it's like if somebody comes out, you tell your child, we do unschooling, and then they come up to your child condescendingly, right, and say, so what is 2 + 2? Right? That's like a fake question.
Yeah.
Or a real question would be, what is the moon made of? Well, I don't know. Let's go find out. Right?
Cheese.
Right. So it's funny that especially the older, much older generation, when I talk about unschooling, they really measure homeschoolers more homeschoolers based on the knowledge and education that they had, right? So, for example, my grandfather, he has a PhD in physics and chemistry, right? So, what do you think he thinks is important for kids to know? Right? So,
Yeah.
he's like,
Culinary skills.
right. And it's kind of laughable that that's kind of what he's asking of my kids. Is like, do they know mathematics? Like basic stuff. Like, it's just amazing how we always are judging the competence of other people
Yeah.
based on our own knowledge.
I want. Yeah. I did want to run down some myths if you guys want to change
Sure.
Yeah.
gears and go towards some myths. All right. Well, I mean, to recap for the people watching, you've heard all four of us rail on public school for an hour now, and you should understand why these places are bad. You got to get your kids out. If you have to move, if you have to change jobs, if you have to, do what you got to, then where do you start? Check your state laws. Make sure, do what you have to do. Fill out the forms, write the necessary paperwork that you have to do, and get them out. Now, once they're out, you probably have some questions about some myths that people say. I'll throw the first one out there. The all-time obvious, most rampant myth about homeschooling is, what about the social aspect?
Socialization.
Socialization.
Oh my God.
I'm sure you've heard that one.
Yes, I've heard that one.
That gets you.
Yeah. I mean, let's come on. We're all smart adults here. We have an internet that we use, and with this magic interwebs, we can connect with other people who are doing the same things that we're doing. My wife is involved in 2 or 3 different homeschool groups on Facebook. I'm involved in 1 or 2 of them, and find local ones. There's one Facebook group, a local one around here. Every year, we actually, believe it or not, we actually live like 10 minutes away from one of the only drive-in movies left in the entire area.
Wow.
So the first night that they're open, they have to test the reels and test the machinery and make sure everything's working right. Well, the admin of the homeschool group that we're in is friends with the owner. So the owner says, well, we'll have a homeschool night here, and let everybody in your group know. Everybody can come. It's free to everybody because we have to test these things anyway. Just maybe encourage people to buy something from the snack bar, and they can watch free movies.
I love my snack bar.
And the place was full of homeschool kids and full of homeschooling parents, and the kids ran around and played in front of the movie screen while it was still daylight. And then when it got dark, they all went back to the cars, and my daughter made a friend and went back to his car and sat with his mommy and had popcorn and watched the movie, and it was great. I mean, there's so much you can do for socialization.
There's sports. There's all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things. Anybody who says, what about the socialization? To me, unfortunately, that puts a big red mark on you that you haven't done 5 minutes of research into homeschooling. You don't know what it is. You don't know what it's about. You're just parroting talking points that you hear other people say. You haven't done any research at all. If the socialization is your biggest issue, you haven't researched homeschooling at all.
I think a lot of it too is a fear that of that admittance that maybe they're being a bad parent or a shitty parent, one could say, by sending their kid to a public school.
Yeah, I mean, look at what's in public school. You've got, kids who are being thrown in public school as a means of babysitting. They've got no parental direction at home. They've got no moral compass at all. I mean, it's almost literally prison for children. The socialization that you're getting in public schools is not the socialization that you want your children to grow up with. And I know some people are real hard asses and they say, well, you got to send them to learn how to deal with the assholes of life. And I'm over here like, why would you want to subject them to that shit to begin with? Just teach them disassociation and they're good to go.
Right.
Yeah. Well, my argument against the socialization issue is tied to that a little bit. obviously the social, like you said, the socialization you get there. I mean, that's where the bully culture is bred.
Yep.
And it just gets extended into adulthood, and that's when the bullies in school usually often become the bullies, and when they get older, they become cops, or or they go into the military,
Border patrol.
yeah, exactly.
And
But
it really-
also the for me,
Or
when
bus
people
driver.
when people hey now when people
Sorry.
when people say the socialization, aside from that, my second point is, well, aren't you worried about your child getting an education? What does that have anything to do with socialization? Socialization is not supposed to be a part of school. You're supposed to be learning. You're
I
not
think
supposed.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just so that's part of my argument too. Like, why are you so concerned? And then also, in their mind, you're learning to socialize, but who are you being taught to social? You're being forced to socialize with people your age.
And
You're
it also implies that like you can't be a social person unless you're thrown into school. Like if you don't go to school, you'll be socially awkward. And it's like, how many people did we all know in high school that were socially awkward, that went through 12 years of public schooling, and
Most of them.
they're if anything, they're more socially awkward going out than when they went in.
Yes, we call them the nerds, the geeks, the spazzes. That was me. Yeah. So
The
I know all about that. But that, like I said, that I mean, socialization is like you're being forced to socialize with kids your own age. You're surrounded by kids your own age. How that's not socialization. That's central planning.
Yeah, exactly.
How are you going to tell me that a kid that is a young child that is forced to be around other kids, just other kids his age, maybe a year in either direction, and then maybe get occasional interaction with kids a little bit older, a little bit younger, depending on where the school is, depending on how many grades are in one school? How are you going to tell me that child, even if you take away the bullying aspect, how are you going to tell me that child is better socialized than one who gets to spend most of their lives with friends doing other things where they're not being forced to do it, and being around adults and not ones that are just standing in front of them in front of the classroom being authoritarian and being and telling them what to do, interacting, having real conversations with older people and expanding their vocabulary and expanding their ability to grasp concepts and logic and reason at light years before any of us were ever given the opportunity to do so. Like, how are you going to tell me that second child is not the better socialized one? Like, that's insane. But again, like you said, it's just the rhetoric that people have been taught. That's all they know. They haven't bothered. Oh yeah, you're not getting socialization, so you're gonna end up being this miserable person who can't. They anticipate homeschoolers to either end up being serial killers or what's the word where you won't leave the house. What's that? I always forget what that's called. Where you're afraid to leave the house, the disease.
Agoraphobia?
Yeah, is that it? Yeah. You're either going to become that, or you're going to become a serial killer. It can't possibly come out any other way.
Just watch any Hollywood movie that mentions homeschooling, and you'll see the the stereotype.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My cousins were both homeschooled, and both of them are very well-adjusted people. They weren't unschooled; they were like legit, straight up homeschooled. But I mean, they were a little socially awkward sometimes. But that's just because when you get around 16, 17, you're operating on a different wavelength if you're going to a public school than someone who is going to homeschool. Like you may not be as exposed to certain things. And, that's where the parent's job is to step in and expose that child in a safer manner than, learning about sex in school, learning about drugs. I mean, I doubt those kids, my cousins, saw or heard of drugs until they were 17 or 18. And, first time I ever took a drug, I was probably 14, 13. And that wouldn't have happened at home.
Yeah.
Most likely. I mean, I can't say for sure, but most likely.
Yeah, Jeremy was talking about being around different age groups, and yeah, like when I go out with my friends, they yeah, my kids are around all different age groups, and what's beautiful is that, like Jeremy said, they're interacting with adults in not an authoritarian manner, and that's so beautiful. My kids talk to adults as equals, basically. They don't cower, they're not afraid. They most often speak their mind, and that's great. I love that. They're not afraid. They're not afraid when they see an adult. They don't feel like an inferior. And that's how most kids are basically trained to feel. When you go to school, right? It's an authority figure. You ask permission. You raise your hand. You don't speak unless spoken to, and it's really really sad that kind of almost like a slave mentality that's driven into most of us,
Well,
and it's difficult to break. But yeah. Yeah.
this definitely ties into peaceful parenting. Peaceful parenting and homeschooling really do go hand in hand. We treat our daughter like an equal. She's a smaller equal, but she is an equal. We don't pull rank on her. We don't say
Yeah.
I'm the father. That's why.
Right. Yeah.
She's a little kid, but we don't talk to her in that goofy baby voice that some stupid grown-ups do. We treat her like an equal.
It's very. Here's one of the things I always think about punishment in this peaceful parenting thing. You can teach them a very quick lesson on capitalism and use that as punishment. Like, hey, could you help me clean the house? No, okay, well, I'm not going to help you get food tonight. Like, I need a little give and go here. You've got to do something to get this. There's a supply and demand here, and right now, you get what I'm saying. The supply of this food is in high demand by you helping me clean this house.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not so sure I'd go that far. That's funny enough.
I mean, I really don't know how to wrap my head around it, but I don't have kids, so I'm not really in that position. But, if a kid's acting out, I just got my ass beat, so I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we could dedicate an entire episode rather to peaceful
Yeah.
parenting.
I think we should do that. Definitely.
Yeah, sure. I'd be game. There's plenty other people who I can recommend to come on too. But anyway, back to homeschooling is that we treat her as an equal, and that goes hand in hand with peaceful parenting. There was another point I was going to make. It completely slipped my mind. I'm sorry about that. Another myth, and that was something I think it was you, Danilo, who mentioned it before. Was people worried about if your kids are up to snuff or up to par, and it's like, well, what if they're not up to snuff with other kids their age?
Right.
To that I answer, so what?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so your kid is slightly behind other average 8-year-olds in math. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
If math is what your child wants to learn and wants to study, they'll learn it and they'll study it. If they need it, they will learn it.
Yeah, I constantly keep going back to these homeschooling mothers, but they're good examples. I'm telling you.
I'm done with this. I'm done with this.
No, it's good. It's good research to draw back on. But
I'm just gonna make one giant edit to send to Monica. It's just gonna have Danilo in different shirts in different positions saying stuff about homeschooling mothers and all these homeschooling mothers and these ladies I hang out with and my friends.
Is this a homeschooling mother's brothel or something? What is this?
She knows what's going on. I'm telling you, she knows.
Okay. All right. All right.
But anyway, you were saying.
So yeah, so so to go from what John is doing, which is complete freedom for the kid, whatever, respect whatever they want to do, and then some of the homeschoolers that I meet, they got their kid back to back in classes, swim classes, diving classes, wrestling, all this kind of different things, and then they're telling me my kid can do kayaking, canoeing, swimming, diving, wrestling, all these different things. things, and I'm joking, and I look at that, and I'm like, well, my kid stopped peeing in the bed. So I guess that's good. That's good. So I mean, it's just funny how, yeah, like you said, even amongst homeschoolers, there's that competition. Are you? I don't know if they do that intentionally, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a competition. I mean,
It's not.
all kids advance differently.
I guess they're looking for validation.
Yeah.
I think so, and maybe they're looking for proof that homeschooling doesn't work. Like, aha, your child isn't up to snuff in reading, so homeschooling doesn't work. I knew
Right.
it.
Right.
It's like,
Exactly.
well, it doesn't
Yeah.
really work like that. I mean, the whole point of homeschooling is individualized education. You're taking
Yeah.
them out of an environment where everybody has to learn the same exact thing, and now you're putting them into an environment where you learn what you want to learn and you learn what you like to learn. And if you don't like something, it doesn't interest you, you don't have to learn it. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I mean, we could go on and on with the list of misconceptions and myths and all this stuff, but I mean, this one, yeah, people, they don't, as far as, checking in and being like, well, what do they know? But that's exactly the point. They don't think about the fact that, well, why do you think that a kid at this age should know this? Because there's a one size fits all program out there. Like, it totally slips their mind. It just goes right over their head that's why you think that everybody should learn the certain thing at a certain time. But then they don't see they don't realize that that's why so many people fail, because they're forced to learn like everybody else, and it doesn't work that way.
It's a forced paradigm. Right?
Yeah, I don't come across too many people that both enjoyed their government indoctrination and felt that they learned, like they came away later in life knowing all these things. Like, yes, you'll meet the arrogant people that think they know everything about something. But on the whole, most people later in life, they don't take it to the logical conclusions, unfortunately, but they'll realize that they have to relearn something, or they have to go seek out to learn something that they were never taught. And unfortunately, most of them, it's just a fleeting thing where they'll think, hey, why didn't I ever learn this? And then the ADD kicks in and they go, oh, I can learn it right here. Okay. And then they forget why they didn't learn it in the first place. But it's that mentality. Like, people just, this is what I did. This is what my parents did. This is the way it goes. This people have to learn at a certain rate. They have to learn by a certain time. They have to know these things. And I mean, it's so silly because, again, like you said, they just haven't bothered to research.
Yeah, the holding back, holding someone back, for like fourth or third or first grade, Yeah, they're not learning they learn differently.
Yeah, everybody, people, if you think
And that
about it in
crushes a kid psychologically. It crushes them.
It can, absolutely. I've met so many people that later in life finally had success, but it took them a long time because they thought they were dumb, and they weren't. They were told by the system that they were dumb.
Exactly.
They were told that because they were forced into remedial classes, because they may have been forced to repeat a grade, and it wasn't that they weren't trying. At some point they may have given up, but on the whole, it wasn't because they weren't trying. It just wasn't getting through to them in the way that it was forced on everybody else. So, it's the freedom thing. I mean, obviously, as anarchists, we know freedom in general scares the ever-living piss out of most people.
It really does. Yeah.
It's that Larkin quote. The most common response I get when I tell people they should be free is, "No, I shouldn't." And it goes for schooling too. Telling people that, maybe you should look at the fact that it may just be better to give your kid freedom. Let them figure things out.
To drive the indoctrination point home again, I think I might have mentioned this on the last program, is that they are cranking kids out of these schools, and they are telling these kids that it was necessary to drop not one but two atomic bombs on Japan and wipe out like 200,000 citizens. And these kids are coming out of school going, well, it was necessary to end the war. We had to do it. And if that's not screaming to you what this indoctrination is, I don't know how else to break it to you.
World War II got us out of the Great Depression. Why can't you understand that?
Jeremy made me think of another myth that I really want to go over. And I know the list of myths can be a mile long, but I really do want to get the big main ones that everybody seems to be hung up on. And that's one myth that I hear is, well, I would love to homeschool, but I just can't. I'm too dumb. I'm not qualified enough. I can't teach. I'm not qualified to do this.
In my case, that's true.
well, maybe it is true, but that doesn't.
I'm joking. I'm really smart.
I don't know that. So I mean, you don't need to be qualified to teach your kids. I mean, hand them an internet, hand them the laptop, and say, go to town, learn what you need to learn. Even if you do a lot of homeschooling curriculums these days, a lot of it is even the curriculums are self-taught, and you sit the kid down and they watch a video series on the lesson, and then they do a multiple choice thing on the website that they're doing the curriculum from, or whatever it may be.
So maybe we'll finish up with this one as the last myth, and then we'll wrap it up. But yeah, that is a good that is a common complaint that I hear. You're not qualified. You don't have a master's degree. You don't have a degree. You don't have a license to teach. And I'm like, one of the first things I say is, do I have to be a master chef to cook dinner?
Yeah.
Do I have to be a NASCAR driver to drive my kids around to places they need to go?
It'd be more fun. Let's be real honest.
And let's say, okay, for the sake of conversation, let's say you are too dumb. You don't know things. You don't understand what the child is learning. Learn with them. This is a perfect opportunity for you to bond with your child and learn something together. Sit and relearn 5th grade math with them. Relearn some history. Give them the correct history.
That's gonna cut into my keeping up with the Kardashians time, and I really, it's just I'd rather let the state do it because I'm a lazy bag of shit,
Well, that also requires a lot of humility to be able to admit that you don't know and actually want to learn. Like, I mean, I'm somebody like that, obviously, because I realized that I was taught a whole bunch of crap, so I had to relearn a bunch of things. So I have no problem with that. Like, I look at even if my wife wasn't as on board as she was, and even if she wasn't, even if she hadn't been a special education teacher in the past and actually has degrees and all that stuff, like, I would still feel confident enough because I'm okay with saying, well, I don't know. And it goes back to that whole thing about, when you said earlier, John, about, the kids versus, being told what to learn and just being, well, this is how it is. And well, this is how it isn't, if they maybe ask why, well, it's what it says in the book. So that's what we're going with. Like, that's the attitude of a lot of teachers because that's how they were taught. And it's like, well, this is what I was told. And this is, but versus being at home and asking why. And the best thing you could do to not only encourage them to continue asking why, but also if you don't know, instead of saying, well, I don't know, go ask somebody else, say, I don't know. Why don't we go learn together? Let's go look it up. Let's go, exactly. Because that's the thing. And because most people, like I said, it's a humility thing because a lot of people are afraid to admit they don't know certain things. And even if they're willing to kind of admit it, they don't think they can fix it. So they don't even think to say, well, maybe I'll take the class along with them. That's like something like Tom Woods' stuff. That he just finished putting out for the Ron Paul curriculum. Like, I'm actually trying to save up money to buy his courses for me. I want to take his government history courses. Like, I'm willing to spend money on that because I'm sure I can learn something from that, and it's like, and then I'll have them for my kids when they get that age, if they're interested in it, they could learn it.
It's just a one-page book. It says government is bad, okay?
and that's the best part. I mean, something that I absolutely love this is when my daughter asks me something and I say, well, you know what, honey, I don't know. Let's find out together. Let's go answer your question together. You know, whatever it may be, and we can either, hop on Google or go whatever it is, look it up and learn things together. I don't have a problem saying I don't know.
I'm too much of an asshole, John. If I had a kid and they're like, "Hey, Daddy, what's this?" I'd be like, "Have you Googled it yet?"
Google it, stupid.
Do not ask me until you have Googled it, and then I will Google it and find it for you.
Exactly.
I would be terrible.
As John said before, some people probably shouldn't have kids.
Not naming names.
No,
Hey,
no. I was just reiterating a great point.
I don't want kids.
The timing
is
totally
perfect.
coincidental. It was coincidental.
I don't want kids. I know this. I feel like I'm too selfish. Which I don't know. I'd probably be like the best dad ever because
You're still young, David. You're at your age. I actually 4 or 5 years past you, I was still convinced I didn't want kids.
like 40 years ago, someone my age would already be married and have like 3 kids and like, so like no, I'm not too young. I'm just
How old are you?
No,
I'm
you're
28.
28?
you are too young, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't have my kids until I was 34.
Yeah, that's because you didn't get laid till you was 34.
Dave, that was supposed to be our secret.
I only go for Danilo laughs. Like you got to realize this. When Danilo's laughing, it builds me up for the rest of the week.
I'm not a child hater, but
They should just, live on Child Island and be raised by robots.
so you just brought up something else I just thought of, is that every parent wants their children to learn, and besides government schooling, wants to learn exactly what they know, right? So, for example, I love chess, piano, and philosophy, right? For let's say, or yeah, so let's say chess and piano. So I could see most parents forcing their kids to learn chess and piano who love chess and piano. They're like, every kid should know chess and piano. And that's the fundamental error, is that we always are imposing our own aptitudes and skills, what we think is important, onto our children, right? And the difference with volunteers and unschoolers is that we know that's not okay. It's not okay to force your kid to do what he hates or what he doesn't want to do, because he might and most likely will eventually hate it. That's how you foster hatred towards a particular subject or hatred towards learning in general. It's just forcing them to do things against their will. So and the way that I would like my kid to learn chess and piano is perhaps by me playing it a lot, me playing chess and playing piano, and then showing them how much I love to do it, and if they pick it up, that's awesome. Like recently, my son, he's 5. He's been asking me. I take out the chessboard a lot when we go out, and he's been asking me, oh, let's play a game. So now we're now we're playing. So it's pretty cool. And Monica's like, why haven't you done that before? I'm like, well, you didn't ask me.
Yeah, you don't want to.
I agree to a certain extent on your assertion there, Danilo. But like, I think back to myself as a kid, and like my dad let me quit playing baseball. And, like, I played baseball my whole life until my dad let me quit. And, like, I know this sounds in a weird way, but like looking back on it, I kind of wished I had, like, the Tiger Woods daddy, situation going on where, like, he wouldn't let me quit. Because, like, I really don't know where that would have went, because everywhere I played baseball till I was 12. Every team, I was either the best player or one of the best players. Like, my teammate is in the pros right now. So, like...
if you're the best player but you hate it, I mean, what's the value of that, though?
I didn't hate it. I was just lazy. Like, I wanted to play video games.
Or still, if that wasn't a value in your life, then still, I mean...
I kind of wished he would have Tiger Woods daddied me.
Well,
Just been like, no, you're doing baseball, and you're going to like it. I really wished he would have.
You didn't want it enough.
All right, maybe I wished I could go back in time and like slap myself in the face.
Yeah. And hindsight's 20/20, brother. All of us wish we could go back
you
in
would
time
have
for
totally
something.
smoked weed in that bus if you would have. I mean, come on, you would have smoked that. You would have hotboxed that bus.
I would have started smoking. I would have started smoking cannabis a lot earlier in life. I definitely would have done that. But yeah.
It'd be funny to like fishbowl the school bus and then open the window and drive down, make like a chemtrail on the highway.
Oh, John.
Yeah. Maybe one day I'll just have to confiscate one just to do that.
So let's go lightning round. Boom, boom, boom. All four of us. All right. You've got to pitch unschooling or homeschooling, non-state funded schooling. Go ahead and do that. You've got to pitch that to the person who's even thinking about it. John, start first.
I have to start. Okay.
Well, no. Let's go Danilo first, and then we'll go Jeremy, and then we'll save you. Or I'll go, and then you go last.
Okay, I'll wrap it up.
You keep changing the rules here. Okay.
Well, he's the guest. He should finish
That's
up.
why we don't like to play with Dave, because he just changes the rules. He's like government. He just changes the rules on the fly.
I'm a goalpost moving son of a bitch. I'm sorry.
He gets a double roll of the dice, and he can print the money. Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I think you're starting.
Yeah, go ahead, Danilo.
No, you said you're going to start first, Dave.
Okay, all right. So,
Okay.
here's my thing. Okay, if you're thinking about if you have kids and you have them in
Hi, Michael.
if you have your kids in a state institution, please consider this. Take your kid out of state-ran education. Put them in private schools. Get them a tutor. Unschool them or homeschool them. Rob the state of your child's mind. That is the only thing I can say about this. Please rob the state of your child's mind. And I will pass it to Danilo.
Yeah, I like to tell people, reflect on your history, on your experience in government school. Did you enjoy it? And if you did not, if you can honestly say you did not enjoy it, then how can you, with dignity and integrity, send your own offspring to go to a place that you absolutely hated? And is that not child abuse? To subject your child to something that you absolutely hated, so that's what I would say.
Yeah. Well, I would, if we're talking about the quick elevator speech, I would, I would probably say something along those lines too, where it's, think back on how you felt going there. And on the flip side of that, if you claim to have enjoyed it, the next thing you'll look at is how much of what you learned do you actually use in your everyday life?
All of it.
Like how much, the old, remember back to when you were in school and you asked maybe you asked, why do we need to know this? Are we ever going to use this in when we grow up? And some teachers may have been honest with you and other teachers may have, blown smoke up your ass. But, think back to that and say, okay, really, how much of what you learned do you use?
But Jeremy, it's just to make you a well-rounded individual.
Well, yeah, but again, and also remember that, if you're thinking back to when you were, also think about how much technology has advanced since then, and just even think in your own daily life. If you need to learn something, are you able to do it relatively quickly on your own by just going to the internet and typing in some words and getting kicked back like thousands of results? Okay, if you can do that, why can't your child?
Think about the poor people that don't have internet, Jeremy. Come on.
Hey, you can steal Wi-Fi from just about anyone.
How else are they going to learn the Pythagorean theorem, okay?
One of the things with the aforementioned, what do you use in your everyday life?
Me and Danilo was telling me about it when he was talking about homeschooling moms, so I don't know. John?
I can see that as a name for a possible website. Homeschooling moms. Okay.
Hot co-ed homeschooling moms. Anyways.
I guess I can say, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're not a statist. You've already woken up. You've already seen shit for what it is. Why do you keep your children in these schools? You know how bad they are. And I'm not trying to be like a preacher or anything. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I just want you to question why your children are in these places to begin with. Like Jeremy said, you don't use half this stuff in your everyday life. There's no need for your kids to be in here. After everything you've seen on the podcast here, and I'm sure other podcasts cover it too, you can find great information on YouTube and books and groups and all that stuff. Ask yourself why they're still in there, and is there anything I can do to change that to get them out? You're not a statist. You don't want the state raising your children, which is what you do when you put them in public school. So I really want to end it by saying, if you still have any questions, please contact me, and I would have no problem helping anybody one-on-one, coming up with ways to help homeschool your kid, how to make it happen. Any kind of advice that I can give, hit me up at the Facebook page Raising Common Sense Anarchists, and I'll definitely get back to you. I have a Twitter feed too. I haven't used it in forever. I hardly ever use it, but hit me up at Twitter. I'm at Johnny Voluntary, Jonny Voluntary, and I'd be happy to help anybody with any additional questions.
Yes, definitely. I mean, homeschooling and unschooling can be a solitary and lonely thing, and so it's vitally important that you connect with people that are doing it. Connect through Facebook, through there's Yahoo groups. There's just look in your area. There's a lot of people. When you start looking, you really realize how many people are doing it, and it should not be a lonely thing. That's the problem. That's the other fallacy is people think we just throw our kids in the room, throw books at them, and lock the door, and that's homeschooling, right? It's out being out and meeting other families and going to museums, going to trails, hiking, and parks, and just doing fun activities, and that's education right there. So
Sure.
don't go ahead.
There are two points that I do want to make real quick before we wrap this up, and this will be my final 2 points. Is one thing to consider is if your child has never been into public school, you can ignore this next part. But if your child has been in public school, even for 1 or 2 years, when you pull them out, you're going to have a transitional period called deschooling. And what deschooling is it refers to the transitional period from taking your child out of a heavily structured, heavily regimented learning institution, and you're putting them into the free world and saying, go, learn what you want, go do what you need to do, go learn, be free. And it is a bit of an adjustment period. And yeah, there's still days when my daughter does nothing but watch stupid Barbie cartoons on TV. And that's okay. That's her, that's what she needs to do to get used to it. This period of transition can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. So, be patient. My daughter is still going through that a little bit. It's not as bad as it was before, but she's starting to understand that, okay, she has this freedom and not everything is regimented by a bell or by a timer. So she's getting used to that. Like I said, that's only really important if you've had a child in public school before and you're taking them out now. Any of you guys thoughts on that? On deschooling?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, get your kids out of gun-free zones. That's what I mean. No, but no, I agree. I mean, yeah, that's what Amanda was talking about. She said there was this weird transition period when she got her kids out of schools, but she said her kids are acting so much better. There's so much just the family
Yep.
coherency is so much higher, and the proof is in the pudding. When someone can come on and say that they're seeing positive results from this, it's very hard to disagree with. And we can say what we want, that's not pure evidence or whatnot. There's not a controlled study or whatnot, but it's working for someone. Try it. If it doesn't work, put your kid back into the prison for their mind.
Yep, and yeah, that was the period she was talking about. It's called deschooling. It's that transitional period. And it's very important that you remain patient during this time. Don't get frustrated if you see your kid just watching TV or just doing some bullshit all day when they could be learning. Leave them alone. They'll pick up the books. They will pick up their learning materials. They will pick up their notepad and pencil and write stories. They will do all this stuff. But you have to give them some time. Give them some time. Like I said, it could take up to 2 years. It could take as short as 3 months. You don't know. Last point I would like to get to, and this is a really important one. And as new homeschoolers, you're probably going to run into this a lot, and that's critical family and friends. On one hand, you would like to just tell them to kick rocks and be done with it, leave you alone. But at the same time, these are your close friends and family that you deal with a lot, and they're going to have questions. Family especially, maybe your friends are good enough where they can say, my weirdo homeschooling friend, and just leave it at that. But you're probably going to have family that thinks this is a terrible, terrible idea. They won't want to hear any of your evidence. They won't want to hear any of your studies. It's all feels, and it's what they think. And I just want you to be prepared that you are going to have family members that don't agree with this, and no amount of debating is going to convince them otherwise. You may have to tell them, like, listen, I love you, but we can't discuss this anymore. This is the way it is. You can either respect it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could just hit them with the simple fact that 100% of everyone that goes to high school dies. And, if they're going to hit you with the feels train, you hit them right back,
Yeah, exactly. So that's that. Just, some things to be aware of if you do choose to homeschool, which I do hope you do. And if you have any questions or any concerns, please get me at Twitter. Again, that's JONNY, Johnny Voluntary. Hit me up at Raising Common Sense Anarchists on Facebook. Hit me up at my other page too, the New Sons and Daughters of Liberty. Shoot me a question. I'll get back to you.
Okay. Well, all right. No, I'm just gonna say, on the idea of family disagreeing. Yeah, that is a very difficult part of it, but it's something that we all have to not only unschooling, but even just voluntarism. A lot of us come from statist backgrounds, so yeah, you're gonna endure the wrath and scorn of people that have raised you, and interestingly enough, sometimes they feel personally offended if you unschool because they send you to the government school. So sometimes they take that as a personal offense at their own parenting method.
Oh, sure.
And you have to clarify. No, I'm not faulting you. I'm just saying I don't choose to raise my kids that way. And maybe I don't think you had malicious intent. You probably did the best you can with what you knew, and that's it. You weren't trying to indoctrinate me, right? You thought that was the best thing. You thought, everybody sends their kid to public school, it must be good, so I'm gonna send my kid to public school. So
oh, yeah, I mean, we hear it all the time. I mean, how often do we hear, like, oh yeah, I went to public school and I turned out fine.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we can go on and on. So we'll wrap it up. So thanks a lot, John, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime. I always have a blast with you guys. You guys are fun.
Yeah, the subject needs to be visited and revisited because as long as government school exists, we must continue to rail against it and remove your child as Dave said, you got to rob the state of your child's mind, one mind at a time. We're robbing the state, right? So, hopefully we can make a dent.
That's the title of the show, right there.
Excellent. Rob the state of your child.
That are hot homeschooling moms. I'm really torn right
between the two. All right.
I'm torn. I think the hot homeschooling moms is going to get more views though, so we might go with that.
Clickbait, Jeremy. Come on, think of the clickbait. All right. All right. So thank you very much.
I am above Austin Peterson tactics. Screw that.
He's running for president, bro.
That would be one of the aforementioned tactics I am above.
Oh, God.
I can't believe. So, yeah.
I'd rather Bernie get in.
So anybody want to help us out, you can like, share, comment, subscribe to our channel. That's always going to help us get the word out, as well as supporting us on Bitcoin, PayPal. Oh, no, not PayPal, sorry, or Patreon. Bitcoin and Patreon. The links are below. So please help us out if you want to help us continue providing content. We love doing this. And if we get monetary support, that's just wonderful feedback for us. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening. This is the Seeds of Liberty podcast. You can all of those links on theseedsofliberty.com. I should mention. So this is the Seeds of Liberty. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you, John.